I'm really a guy who lives out in the woods. Don't have any of those special fancy titles. But I am a father, and I want my children to live in a Christian nation. And I want my children to live in a Christian nation.
So I was recording an ad outside just a moment ago, and I thought it's such a nice day, a kind of a slight breeze. The birds are out there singing. Roosters are, of course, doing what they always do. And the camera equipment's already out here, so why not just do a video out here? I didn't really have anything prepared, to be honest, so I'm just gonna think through things. Let's call it the roundup. It's a Friday for me. This is probably coming out on a few days, but it's a Friday for me, so it's a good time to kind of do a roundup on what happened in the week and thoughts on the week and whatever comes to my mind. So hopefully you enjoy this. Yeah, a lot of wild things have happened in the last 2 weeks since Trump was inaugurated. It's hard to keep up with everything I'm doing right now, to keep up with what's going on and all the various twists and turns and expectations being fulfilled, and maybe a couple not being fulfilled or opposite of what we want. But a lot of great things have been happening. I've said before that it turns out you can just do things. It turns out that actually you can, when you have the will and you have the position, you have the office, you have the power, you can do a lot. And Trump has really done that. He's just really pushed it. All these different networks that where money is slushed around. It seems like this has been going on for probably 30 years, where they would develop these programs and relationships and partners, as they say, USAID partners, that's what they call them nowadays, and stakeholders, that they just develop these relationships, and then you keep the people you want in these agencies, and you just slush the money around. You push it around, you go take it to your people, and they do things, and they're helping people. Turns out in the end that not very many people are actually helped, or if people are helped, it costs a tremendous amount of money because everyone's kind of on the take. You got all of Bill and Hillary's friends in there, you've got Obama's friends, and it seems like actually Obama was the one who spearheaded, well, the Clintons spearheaded, and then Obama just completed the job, which was to provide a extensive network through various different agencies, hard to track, funnel money from here to there to your friends and no one else. So, we talk so much about a regime, right? The new right has said there's this regime, what is it? And we talk about academia, journalism, corporations, bureaucrats, and it's this thing where we kind of know it's happening, but it's not always easy to connect the dots, because to connect the dots, now someone's pulling up, to connect the dots, well, guess what? You have, it's very difficult, hard to trace the money. It's all buried in paperwork. It's buried in systems you don't have access to. And here comes Elon, who shows up with the DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, to show up to then now reveal all of these various connections right on the surface, right for you to search yourself, for the people to look and do all this various, independent sort of journalism. And then you have Twitter, where it doesn't suppress this stuff and it comes out right in your face and you can track it's right there. You're only gonna find it on Twitter. And there's screenshots and it says right there, government grant, 5 million, 10 million. What is this company? Never heard of this company. Someone was talking about this morning about how the greatest benefactor, or the greatest benefiter of government funds is this random company you've never heard before, received like $17 billion over the last decade or something like that. And apparently they transport like health stuff, like drugs and stuff to these various aid activities in foreign countries. And then you see all these news reports, you connect the dots over the years. It turns out they're actually horrible what they do. They keep all that billions of dollars, and they fail often to deliver the shipments that they promised. Yeah, who are you? So who actually are these people? You look at the board of directors and you don't know who these people actually are. How are they making all this money? How did they get the contract? How are they continuing to get all the money in the contracts when they're apparently very bad at their job? Well, most likely they are friends of friends or friends of people powerful like Obama and Clinton. And so, and then of course you can read like RFK's work, where he details how the NIH has their own networks and connections with big pharma, and how their things are pushed through, and how now we have, of course, a sort of drug epidemic. Really, there's sickness, and then instead of dealing with the underlying causes of disease and health problems, which are often nutrition-based or lifestyle-based, they don't deal with that stuff. They don't care about that. In fact, most of the time, their nutrition guidance is crap. What do they do instead? Well, you create a health condition by one, encouraging poor nutrition from the FDA and other sources, or don't regulate those things, and you have crap, or you regulate one thing, and then that raises the incentive to add a certain additive. Take like high fructose corn syrup. So we have all these regulations and tariffs concerning sugar, regular cane sugar, which itself is not great for you, but it's certainly not as bad for you than it is for high fructose corn syrup, and that's what we have in everything. So if you actually want a soda that has real sugar in it, you got to get something imported essentially from Mexico or other places. Creates a health condition, which everyone's fat, no one eats right, and so of course, you have all these diseases are rampant, and so you need all these various drugs to deal with the various ailments. And anyway, so you have these networks that have been created, and now they've all been exploded, they've all been revealed, they've all been shown to the public. And also, it's not merely, this is what happens, like, if you don't have the power, you can complain about it all you want, but they don't care, right? If you don't have the power, I mean, take like Big Eva, right? For about 10 years, people have been revealing the various connections, the ideas, the associations of Big Eva. And guess what? Has it harmed them much? I mean, I think they actually have declined, but that's probably from other factors. I mean, we've been pointing, people like John Harris and others have been pointing stuff out about Big Eva for many, many years, and it doesn't seem to faze them, doesn't seem to change them, doesn't change their behavior. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if they're connected with left-wing people, or they're Christianizing left-wing ideas, or they're becoming woke. They're doing these ridiculous conferences praising adulterers, plagiarists, and all that. Doesn't faze them. What, right? You don't have. So we've been pointing out stuff about the media for many years. All of a sudden, we're all transphobes if we don't think that a dude in a dress is a woman. Point that out, how absurd it is. They don't care. It runs through not only through the media and journalism, it goes into our own medical associations, which now affirm all this stuff. How does that happen? We point it out, it's absurd. They probably know it's absurd as well, and yet they keep doing it. It's not until you have the power. You can do journalism all you want, but it's not until you have the power to change things that things actually get changed, that they're actually threatened, that they're actually undermined. It comes down to having the power. You can preach and talk and tweet and do all you want, but until you have a position of power in which you can defund and delegitimize through defunding, through canceling contracts, you're not going to actually make a dent in them at all. But that's what Trump's doing. We're only 2 weeks in. We're 2 weeks in, and guess what we've accomplished? And I want to say we've accomplished. It's we people on the right who have developed a sort of ecosystem of critique that we've made this possible. I mean, there's some bigger figures, certainly, than me and anyone else. Trump is a big figure, Vance is a big figure, and others as well, are huge figures in advancing this movement where we say, actually, things are bad and they need a radical change. We actually need power and to act. My entire life, I'm not that old, but for anyone living for the most part, They've gone through transformation after transformation in society, one thing after another. If you are 80, you have seen a lot. But you know what we haven't seen in any of that history? Have we seen a conservative movement that sought radical change, that saw the problems and sought radical solutions? I mean, you think of back in the 60s, early 60s, when Bill Buckley is canceling Richard Welch, who was the Birch Society, John Birch Society leader. Now, one of the things that Welch was saying to Buckley was that this guy, this Warren Court, the Earl Warren Court, this is bad. Like they are not only abortion, but they're removing religion entirely from public life through just simply 9 justices saying that's unconstitutional, that doesn't meet the First Amendment. Or then freedom of speech. Freedom of speech apparently means you can say F you in public. Is that actually speech? Well, historically, no. That was considered not a contribution to discourse. And so it could be regulated, certainly at the state level. And so Welch is saying to Bill Buckley, we have to do something radical. This is a fundamental transformation from the left happening in our country right now. And guess what? Bill Buckley didn't want to be embarrassed. You know, of course, things are more complicated than that. But he was becoming friendly, being a New Yorker himself. He was very friendly with Washington Post and New York Times, New York Times and New Yorkers and those sort of power brokers in New York. And he was actually getting some recognition. He could be a sparring partner. He could be a go into dialogue with the establishment left. I mean, Buckley didn't come out of nowhere exactly because he had some earlier writings that made him somewhat famous. He starts National Review with some people. It starts to gain legitimacy, starts to found a sort of conservative movement. And so he cancels him. And that was a radical, Welch was calling for a radical action because it was a fundamental transformation of our country happening from the top to the bottom. What he wanted was the states to resist. He wanted to try to impeach Warren and others on the Supreme Court. And Buckley was just like, we got to go through the process. We got to go through the normal process. Got to go through the normal process. The only thing, 2 things might actually be analogous to this. So there was a sort of Reagan revolution, lowering of tax cuts, that sort of thing. I don't think that actually counts exactly as that because, of course, the military bureaucracy ballooned during his time. But there was some action, but it was, again, what was it about? It was about economics, economic growth. And of course, if you watch Reagan's speeches, he's saying things that are basically the same liberal lines you hear now. We're a nation of immigrants. We'll take anyone who wants to come here and work hard. Like, just watch his farewell address. Watch his farewell address. He reimagines the Pilgrims and the Mayflower as them just being a huddled mass of immigrants who sought freedom, and that's why they came there, when that's a complete ahistorical account. I know that's old news. Everyone knows that. But it just shows that Reagan was part of the same mentality that we now are facing as people on the new right facing, I guess you could say the old right. They were really the new right back then. And then, of course, you have George W. Bush takes us to war. I mean, that's pretty radical. We're going to go into this massive war, 2 wars that last for decades. We never declared war. Of course, we haven't declared war since World War II. Truman started that by sending us to Korea without actually declaring war. That was a fundamental transformation. But anyway, Bush did that. But he really didn't take on the establishment. In a way, Reagan himself, there is a sort of anti-establishment flare going through the 60s and 70s, but populism was largely suppressed. Reagan and his people were already established. They were academics. They were respected in their own fields. Now what we have is Trump is bringing in people not who have the traditional credentials. This is why the confirmation hearings are so contentious and why they're all about, so what qualifies you? What qualifies you to do this or lead that? Haven't you said this, Kennedy Jr., haven't you said this and this and that? Do you have a science degree, this and that? Are you looking for a natural way to boost your family's health? Discover the benefit of elderberry while supporting a Christian family-owned business at Abby's Elderberry. They produce high-quality products by crafting each one without the use of artificial ingredients or preservatives. Just pure, delicious elderberry goodness. Whether you're looking for syrups, a variety of loose leaf blends, or even a DIY kit complete with everything you need to make your own syrup, owners Brad and Starla Walker have it for you at Abby's Elderberry. Visit them at abbieselderberry.com. That's abbieselderberry.com. Visit them today to experience all the goodness of elderberry without the junk. And for listeners of the Lone Bulwark, use promo code BULWARK at checkout to save 15% off your total order. My family has been using elderberry for immune support for many years. The products at Abby's Elderberry taste great, and my entire family loves them. What he's bringing in are people who are willing to act. They have two things. They're loyal to Trump, which Trump seems to value the highest, is loyalty. And so you have loyalty and you have the willingness to act boldly to reshape those institutions and not listen to the credentialed types on what you must and must not do. To not care. I mean, whatever you want to say about Bill Buckley, and I have some negative things, he's not as bad as some people say. But he was an establishment guy. I mean, frankly, a lot of the old conservatives were kind of establishment guys. Even someone, I like Russell Kirk. Let me just say that. I like Russell Kirk. And he was in some way kind of an anti-establishment guy because he had a sort of traditionalism and, hierarchy and all that. I get that. But he was still accepted as a legitimate sort of discussion partner on the national stage. He was respected even by the liberals and the left, and that's fine. I mean, I'm not, but there was a broadly kind of we're the establishment. And that was solidified absolutely in the 90s when the neocons defeated the paleocons. It was, confirmed and solidified with the election of George W. Bush in 2000. And after that, but of course, the things that were predicted actually came true. And so after George W. Bush, you still have rumblings, and you have Obama. You have Obama with the Tea Party, and then Trump shows up and he just unleashes. All of the sort of shackles that kept paleocons and right wingers from making an impact in the country, which it was literally for 15 years. I mean, more than this, but really the paleoconservatism was dead by the late 90s. There was some resurgence with Pat Buchanan, who didn't do great in the presidential runs. That was the dying sort of last gasp of the paleoconservatism, and neocons dominated from the 90s into 2000s into the 2000 teens, and Trump restored that. He was this is why I've said, and I've said this for I don't know, maybe 8 years now. I remember. I've said on Facebook, in my old Facebook years, I said that Trump is a world historical figure. In a way, he's an event in history. Apart from the personality or the man or his actions, he is a sort of event. I called him the Trump event, meaning that he is when we look back in the French Revolution. Okay, the French Revolution is interesting among also the American Revolution. Civil wars like this. Some people are talking about the Civil Rights Act kind of like this. You have to reinterpret the event by the subsequent history. So people are still writing about the French Revolution because the French Revolution has had, so people think, and I think it's probably true, has had profound effects in the West as time has proceeded. Same with the American Revolution and all sorts of things. So you reinterpret it as time progresses to understand the full scope of its meaning. Now, we're still early in the Trump event, but I even, I said this years ago, Trump himself, and now, especially now that he has been elected a second time and what he's doing now, he's a world historical figure. It's an event in history. And 100 years from now, when we're all gone, people are going to still write new books about this era that we're living through right now. And they're going to interpret it based upon what's happening at that time in the world. Right? There's plenty of things that happen in history. There's plenty of things written about in history, but pretty few things have that status of being world historical, such that the future comes to reinterpret it in light of its effects. Trump is one of those guys, and I think it's going. The broader history is going to be that he brought back certain old right, paleoconservative ideas, made them more mainstream, made them more relevant for our world today, and that will have profound changes and effects going forward. I really think that what's happened with the neocons were in retreat in 2016 or in 2017. They joined together with the regime to take down Trump, and this is why you have the Bill Kristols and the David Frenches. David French joining the New York Times actually makes perfect sense. I know you say, oh, he's a conservative and he's a Christian. How could he do that? No, it actually makes perfect sense. The neocons were in retreat. They lost in 2017 just as much. In a way, the neocons lost more in 2017 and 2024 than the left or the center right. The center left did. The liberals. I mean, they're all liberals, but anyway. The neocons lost the most. They were the only game in town when it came to conservatism and the right in the late 90s, the 2000s, and up until about 2015, 2016. They have lost the most. The Weekly Standard's gone. National Review is irrelevant. Dispatch, Bulwark, they're all irrelevant. Not the lone Bulwark, but the Bulwark is irrelevant. And they're propped up. What? Now we find out that, of course, that David French and Russell Moore are on the take from USAID to build their curriculum, the after party. Anyway, the regime is all connected, and that's being dismantled. And the neocons are the losers because the ascendant right, the resurgent right, it's not even that it's dissident anymore. There's some kind of dissidence still going on in there, but it's resurgent, it's ascending. That's what's happening right now. The neocons are dead. They're gone. Trump's in charge of foreign policy, sometimes a little bit good, a little bit bad, dealing more with realities, less interest in spreading freedom around the world by bombs, less interested in throwing our tax dollars at foreigners and also their friends in these various agencies. More interested in a more pragmatic and realist approach to economics, a more America First agenda, the pushing back against the concept of propositional nationhood and the idea that we are a people, we are a place, we do have a home, we have a heritage, and that's worth preserving. All paleocon old right themes, especially paleocon. Some old right was actually full of libertarians like Rothbard, who wouldn't probably like that sort of stuff as much. But so that's what's happening. The neocons are dead. We're ascendant. And like I said a few months ago, it's up for grabs. In some way, what the new right will become, whatever we want to call it, will become, it has the power. You're not just shouting into the void anymore. I'm sorry, I love Chronicles magazine, but for years, since the 90s, and it's still here, that magazine is just sort of shouting into the world, shaking fists at clouds. And that's no longer the case anymore. Now, I certainly want Chronicles magazine it's not about Chronicles, but the point is now, when you tweet out, when you say something, when you convince a friend, when you enter into the discourse, you're no longer just complaining or the old man shaking the fist at the cloud or whatever. You're actually contributing to the discourse that will shape our policy. This is a whole different thing for the dissident right. The fact that we have a vice president who gave a speech talking about we're not merely an idea, we're actually a home. I haven't heard stuff like that since Pat Buchanan ran in 92. I'm sure he said it in 96 and 2000, but 92, I was like 8. So, but so a lot of things change, a lot of things happening. It's very exciting. I'm you know, things happening personally. Look out. I don't know. It's just great to the spring. You know, spring is coming and the sun's right there. It's about to be warmer here. I'll do a lot more of these videos outside. Very exciting times. The Nathaniel Green Society is a Protestant organization dedicated to serving the state of North Carolina and the United States broadly. Their mission statement is, "With thanks and praise to God Almighty, be it known that the Nathaniel Green Society is established for the purpose of mentoring men in the esteemed cultural and folk traditions of America, with a particular reverence for the heritage of the great state of North Carolina. Our mission is to engage men actively in the local community, churches, and various civic organizations, fostering a robust sense of community and civic duty. If you are a conservative Christian man with a desire to employ your time, resources, and unique skills for the sake of your state and nation, then reach out for a membership application. You can contact them at nathanielgreensociety@protonmail.com. That's Nathaniel Green Society at protonmail.com. You can also send a direct message to their official social media account. You can find the link and additional information about the society at nathanielgreensociety.org. Yeah, Trump is taking them down. So that's the first thing I want to talk about. And so I guess the action, like, what do you do now? Like, what's the point? All of what we're doing matters. All of what we're doing matters. There is the thing, so the whole Gaza thing, Trump wants to take over Gaza. I mean, the U.S. has a lot of diplomatic power, a lot of economic power, military power to like get countries to do what he wants them to do. But I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. And here's why. I think there's a lot of pushback on it. A lot of people don't like it. A lot of people who want to appear loyal to Trump and not criticize him will go along with it and think it's a great idea. But this is the thing. So Palestinians moving out of Gaza. First of all, many of them don't want to move out of Gaza. You can't, like forcibly moving them out of Gaza probably won't happen. And Saudi Arabia doesn't want to take them. Egypt doesn't want to take them. Syria doesn't want to take them. Jordan doesn't want to take them. No one wants to take the Palestinians for many reasons. One, they show up and they cause problems in their country. And also they're a drag on the economy typically. They're not, the Palestinians, I have no special love for the Palestinians. In fact, I have reasons to not like the Palestinians, so I don't actually particularly love them or like them. So I don't think that's going to happen. You have to move them out and then you have to build it back up. I don't think, probably Israel doesn't want the U.S. to do that because actually Israel wants to control Gaza. One of the interesting things too about that idea, the idea of taking over Gaza and West Bank and turn it over to Israel. That was actually, this is what people don't realize, and Joel Berry's pontificating on it, saying that's actually the humanitarian. In the 90s, there were Israeli parties who were for that. They wanted that. They wanted to do that. And they were considered the extreme right, ultra-Orthodox, and they were banned. The Israel government banned those parties because they were too extreme. So that idea has floated around, but it was rejected and got to the point where it was banned. The same people and same groups were identified by Israel as terrorist organizations. All right, so for the last 25 at least years, and probably going all the way back to the late 40s, that idea has been suppressed. It's been looked down upon. It's been through government action suppressed. And now all of a sudden Trump says it, and maybe it could be mainstream. But guess what? But either way, what we have to resist is the idea that Palestinians, that Israel can like bomb Gaza into rubble, which it really is just rubble. It's really kind of sad in that way. It's nothing but just cement destruction piled on top of each other. But we have to resist the idea that, oh yeah, Europe, you take the Palestinian refugees. The defense minister of Israel has said this. You read the Wall Street Journal There was probably about a year ago, there was an opinion piece by, I think, the ambassador of Israel to the United States, making that case that actually the West should take all these guys and the U.S. should take all the, and it's in the Wall Street Journal. Wild, right? We have to resist that. Ooh, just burned myself. We have to resist that. So what we have then, same thing with Iraq and Afghanistan, right? We supply the bombs, or we're the one dropping the bombs, and then it creates conditions of displacement and refugees, and then we take them up. So we pay for the bombing, we destroy the country, and then we take the refugees. All right, so the same things happen with Israel. We're the ones giving them military aid, by which they then buy U.S. military equipment, including 1,000-pound bombs, 2,000-pound bombs. We're actually sending them now like up-armored Caterpillar bulldozers, which now Israel has moved into West Bank, and they've used these bulldozers to take out buildings, and they have some plan for West Bank. So this is not confined to merely the Gaza Strip and then that small place, the border of Israel and Syria, which was like a DMZ for a while. It's not confined to there. So, I mean, I think Israel really just wants to take over the entire place and displace everyone. I don't know. Anyway, that sort of thing, whatever Israel does this is the thing. But when I tweet about it and I talk about Israel and in relation to the Palestinians, it's not because I care about the Palestinians. It's not because I care about the Jews. I care that people care so much. That's what it is. I care that you are so utterly emotionally invested in this. Like take what's his name, Daryl Harrison or something like that. He's a part of G3 and Grace to You and all that stuff. When the October 7th thing, 2023 happened, he called for like carpet bombing Gaza, turn it into plastic, boom, boom. Okay, maybe Israel should do that. Maybe if you were an Israeli in Israel, that would be a just thing to do, to essentially destroy all of Gaza with your bombs. Okay. But why are you, Daryl Harrison, who's black, why do you care? Like, why are you so emotionally invested that you go to your computer and do an all caps thing where you care so much about this place? That is a thing that interests me the most. Why we are so emotionally invested in something halfway around the world with people who are not our people, that we care so deeply and so much. Oh, you know why? You say it's dispensationalism. It's more than that. Because Presbyterians care. That one guy, what's his name? The Presbyterian classic theist guy. Forget his name now. He says all the same stuff. You say it's a boomerism. Yeah, it is true. It is kind of a boomer thing. But why is that? It's just massive loads of propaganda. Massive loads of propaganda. Profound levels of propaganda. But hopefully young people will not be as susceptible to the propaganda, which I suspect they will not, but nevertheless, there are great incentives to be an American who's extremely pro-Israel. Sometimes I wonder, where would I be right now if in 2022 the book comes out and I just become the most pro-Zionist person in the world, contrary to all conscience, all facts, all knowledge, all, interests for my own people, say, I'm just going to be pro-Zionist and that's that. Man, the places I'd be in the White House right now. I don't know. I don't know where I'd be. Hopefully I'd just still be here because I like it here. I love it here. So yeah, everything you look behind you, so about 400 yards that way, is still my property. It's mainly wooden, looks a lot like that all the way back. House is behind you. I'm on the deck that I built. So yeah, lots of oak trees, lots of hickories, a lot of poplars. That's kind of the main, there's some sycamores back there, real massive ones that are out there. So, yeah, so that's what I'm talking about. That's it. Anyway, so the next thing I want to talk about is, Thomas Acord and I have started doing our podcast again. we didn't make a big deal of it, him coming back, because we just wanted to kind of take off where we were before and not make a big deal about it and make it as if like, you know, just a kind of a soft return to him joining me in that. And so, yeah, he's with me doing that. We're going through Xenophon's Anabasis, which is, it's a story written by Xenophon, obviously, and it's about the march of the 10,000 Greeks. So when Cyrus, I believe it's Cyrus the Younger, he sought the throne from his brother Artaxerxes, and Cyrus dies, you know, but Cyrus the Younger is considered a great man, certainly by Xenophon, and he actually wrote a, what is it called? I think it's, anyway, he wrote an account of his, in a different book, basically like sort of what do you call it? Not biography, but a sort of dialogue with him and Cyrus. And it's really fascinating. Cyrus seems like a great figure, great man. He was a great man. Anyway, you have the 10,000 Greeks, and they are in the kind of the heart of the Persian Empire. Cyrus dies. They were on the side of Cyrus. And so now Artaxerxes, of course, wants to kill the Greeks because they were on the wrong side. And so it's about the Greeks marching all the way back to Greece. Yeah. We're up through book 3 now. But at one point, the Persians kill all of the generals. They trick the Greek generals and some of the captains, and they all meet together at one point. It's all, they gain the trust, and the Persians actually seem to be the bad guys in this. And the Persians kill the Greek generals. And so instead of the Persians going to wipe out the Greeks because they're leaderless, the Persians, thinking like a Persian, think, oh, your leaders are dead, so therefore you're incapable. As you know, the Persians are like this. Now you're incapable of organization, incapable of order, you're incapable of resistance. So the Persians thought they could just show up and with their shiny armor and their horses, and the Greeks would just submit. Well, that does not happen at all. Instead, the next morning, Xenophon himself looks out upon the Greeks, and they are disorganized, as anyone would be if you lose your leaders. But guess what happens after that? Xenophon says, we need to select our own. And so the Greeks rouse themselves and realize that they need to get back home. They say that they have no king but the gods. No king but the gods, because of course the Persians wanted to become their king and use them essentially as slaves for to maintain their empire, particularly in Egypt, because they were having troubles in Egypt. The point here, why did I bring this up? Xenophon shows up and says, we need to select our leaders. And guess what? That day, they are able to select their leaders, solidify their hierarchy. And it was also through voting. There was a democratic way in which they selected the plan that they were going to do. So raising hands, they sought all the Greeks' input in terms of the plan, if they had a better idea, all the way down to the lowest level. They created military units that actually look very much like, in terms of the organization, and the size of the various echelons look very much like what we have today. So they have their different groups under a general, and then they have companies of 100 soldiers. And today, in today's army, we have companies, and they're about 100, 150, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on what. But that's kind of the average, usually 100, 150. And those are composed, in the U.S. military, composed of troops or platoons. And the same thing with the Greeks. They had more platoons than us, but they had platoons and they had sections, very much like what we have. And you assign leaders at each level. And so, when you watch this, when you read this, as a military guy, I'm seeing that this actually reflects Western warfare, right? So there's something about the Greeks that, in distinction, contradistinction with the Persians, that is uniquely Western. And so in a way, it's emblematic of the difference between the West and the East. In the common view of the West, and this is not just in the ancient times, this is also early modern and other periods where they would say that the East is actually, they like luxury, but they're also kind of soft, and they are weak and they're slavish. they're also very crafty and tricky, so you have to watch out for them, which the Greeks failed at, and that's why they are where they are. All the generals did. But the West is more free, it's more individual, and yet more prone to order. So there is that sort of theme throughout the entire Western tradition that there is individuality, but that individuality does not clash with order, nor does it clash with hierarchy. Whereas the Persians, it's more, and this is true for the Turks. So if you read like the 18th century work, Spirit of the Laws by Montesquieu, he'll say that the Turks, their principle of authority in politics is fear. So they rule by fear, okay? Now, what does it say about the West? What does it say about the United States, the core of the United States, Anglo-Protestantism? What does it say about us? They always say they were individualist. It's true that the West, you could say, is individualist, and we always think that's actually bad. Unless you're a libertarian, you think the individualism is something bad. And we usually say that individualism is contrary to a collectivist or communal or some sort of self-governed order, right? If you're all a bunch of individuals, then you're all a bunch of chiefs, and so you're not going to actually be, no one's going to be in charge, there's always going to be problems and conflict and this and that. But what this story reveals, and it's true for, I think, for the Western tradition as a theme broadly, is that individuality does not contradict hierarchy. It doesn't contradict hierarchy formation. If you have both a strong sense of individuality and a strong sense of the need for order, those two are perfectly reconcilable. They're not contraries. They can coexist, and actually it's the best situation because then you can acknowledge each other's freedom, you can acknowledge each other's equality, and yet at the same time all recognize that you need order and the best should rule. And in that, there's a resistance to rule by fear. Because a rule by fear means that you're slaves, that you're master slave. So a rule by fear is not going to work. It has to be a rule by law and a legitimate lawgiver, which is chosen, voted upon. We don't like the slavish condition of being fearful of our leaders. But at the same time, we want to be a part of something, we want to be part of a mission. And this is the thing about what people don't realize about, particularly American individualism, is what we want is not to be the leader necessarily. We don't want to be the highest, like the most renowned part of a whole, right? We don't need to have that vocation. We don't need to be the Elon Musk. We don't need to be the astronaut in the spaceship. But we do want to be a guy who's a part of that, who is respected and acknowledged for that particular skill that you contribute to it. Okay? That even if you're at the lower end of the hierarchy, you still want to be acknowledged and recognized as an integral part of that operation, of that mission, of that purpose, of that nation. And what this means is you can acknowledge there can be an underlying equality, an underlying mutual respect, even in the midst of hierarchy. And that's what we have. That's what we've had in the West for a long time. Of course, you can point out things that are imperfect with regard to that. But that is a theme, and this is the unfortunate thing. We're also, by the way, we're actually generally opposed to, and this is probably a more modern development, we like process and a sort of a agreement of like, we all get in line, right? There's an order to, so in a bureaucratic process, if you're first in line, you're first. If you're last in line, you wait your turn, right? So there's no like ethnic favoritism. There's no like, oh, he's my brother or my sister, and therefore I have to push him in the front of the line. Like, we kind of frown upon that. We don't like fraud. Most of the world is not like that. Most of the world is highly nepotistic. They're comfortable with fraud. The hierarchy is determined by either some BS metaphysics or religion, or it's by fear. and threat. That's the hierarchy. And so what we are potentially on the horizon, what we might lose is actually that going forward because of immigration. So that's something else. But the point is, this is the point. I think we need to change our mentality about what the West is, particularly the Anglo-Protestant or the Anglo-American tradition. It's individualism reconcilable with hierarchy by means of acknowledging equality and acknowledging your integral part of the operation, the mission, the nation, blah, blah, blah. That is really crucial. You see it in the military where a guy is just happy to be the guy with the saw, the squad automatic weapon. You don't want him in charge, but that guy can lift 1,000 rounds in his packing, carry that saw, and he can get to that position and he can engage the enemy. Guy may barely know how to read or speak or anything like that, but you respect that guy because, man, he gets to that position and he chews up the enemy with that saw. That's the hierarchy formation. And even in the military itself, we've kind of moved so far to a kind of a bureaucratic process for evaluations that we've actually lost that sort of independent, self-governed hierarchy formation that you see elsewhere. You do need some of that, of course. You need some universal process of evaluation, but we've gone so far away from that now it can be manipulated by HR people. You can get quotas, of course, racial and sexual quotas and all that. So that needs, hopefully Hegseth eliminates that sort, and it appears that might be the case as we move forward. Okay. All right, so that's that. Oh man, beautiful day, beautiful day. Yeah, boy. So, yeah, some things changing going forward. So I will have different shows. I will have this show, of course, The Lone Bulwark. I won't give any details on why there's a change or who I'm joining or all that stuff, but there will be some changes and all that'll be, I just hailed a bug. But there will be changes going forward, and I'll have other shows. I'll have the show with Thomas where we go through the great books. Really, that'll be hopefully very beneficial to you. Please read the books along with us. And also have my own podcast, and I'm going to interview people. Eventually, once I build my office, which you can't see, but it's more over to the right over there, I'm going to invite people over here. I'm going to have, I'm no Joe Rogan, but I'm going to have some kind of conversation of over 2 or 3 hours with someone, kind of like what he does. I really like that format. And so that, maybe 7-8 months we'll be able to just do something like that. And so you'll just, move. You're going to see that. Yeah. All right. Well, that's enough for today. I think I've talked enough about some random things. And so like, subscribe, do all that. And thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And I'll see you guys later.